I'm with Mary Katharine Ham. Everybody, welcome to Walk-Ins. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So good. I mean, I really just want to podcast with you in general, full time. I was joking before we started recording, like I want to start another one called Mouthy Broads.
I love
it. It's just me and all my girlfriends who are too mouthy out in the public space. How did We are mouthy. How did you get into being tell my audience what you do exactly?
My path to being a mouthy broad.
Yeah, your path to being a public mouthy broad. Who let you out of the kitchen, woman?
I am a Fox News contributor. As I tell lay people, I'm one of those people who argues about politics and news of the day on TV and radio. I have in the past been a CNN commentator for years, so I've done duty at sort of two different networks. A very different feel at both. Obviously, ideologically, I'm right of center, sort of libertarian-ish, and was a bit of a fish out of water at CNN. Definitely more comfortable over at Fox. Although one of the ways I became a mouthy broad is because I relish discussing things with people who disagree with me. It doesn't actually bother me, and never has, because I grew up in a very, very liberal town and sort of evolved in an environment where I was just sort of poking the general assumptions a lot. And I didn't know that was an ideological position. I just was like, everyone here seems to believe the same thing. Why do we all believe the same thing? And a lot of people didn't have great answers for that.
I really don't relish the conflict. I see that you do, and I kind of envy that because I'm not someone, I feel like a classic child of divorce who's like, I want everyone to get along. And I come from the left and I just didn't know, I guess. I knew that there were conservatives out there, but I didn't know many, and I didn't have to really have any of my ideas tested at all until I got caught in the crossfire of the culture wars.
Right.
And I still don't really like debating and all that. Some people are just so much better at it. I don't know. It seems like I would be better suited. I don't feel like I'm well suited for this space most of the time. Like I feel like a fish out of water in this space that we even occupy. Because it seems like it's people who just like arguing.
Well, no, I think being brave enough to be a person who swims against the current, we're using all fish metaphors, being brave enough to be that person makes you a suitable person for this space, because I think it's hard to be that person. I mean, I always tell college students, because I do a lot of work on college campuses, often about free speech. And I say that, I know that it's very hard for you. I know the pressure in every room you're in is to all believe the same thing. But the fact is that rooms need weirdos. Like I'm the weirdo in the room in many rooms I'm in. And if there are no weirdos in the room, then no ideas are tested, and the ideas end up getting really, really bad. And the environment also gets really bullying. So I don't actually enjoy conflict per se. Some of debate is a little bit of a puzzle that is fun to put together on the fly, and you're trying to figure out how to parry things and how to best someone at certain moments. But I think what I like more than that is being able to communicate clearly about something I care about. And yeah, I'll go to conflict when it's something I care deeply about. But part of communicating clearly and convincing people is noting you and I can have things in common. You and I can think about things in different ways, but also consider each other's points of view. So I like to do both.
I just basically find that, I get called a reactionary a lot. And it's this term that people throw around for anybody who seems to be rightfully reacting to. We were talking about this even texting, just that the article about the woo-woo, the Atlantic, the woo-woo caucus. And I was seeing this the other day. I think Noah Smith was tweeting about how, the right only has the reactionaries and the cranks, and the left is the normies. And I was like, I'm sorry, you think there are no weirdos on your side? I have a bridge to sell you. That's insane. But there is this sense that to this election feels very much like establishment versus anti-establishment more than anything. And coming from the left and having the anti-establishment be a little more right-centered is very disorienting. And I'm not someone who lived and breathed and grew up in politics. It's something I just kind of stumbled into. So from your perspective, has this been a long time coming, this kind of switching of the parties? I know I've heard that this happens periodically in America, kind of every quarter century or so. But what do you feel as someone who seems like you're a little bit in the same Yeah,
it's been odd to live through. I think there are positives to a realignment of some sort. For instance, the fact that union members might sort more evenly between Democrats and Republicans would be good for that demographic. Anytime you have two parties fighting over you, you're going to get more listened to. You're going to get more things pitched to you. You're going to get more visits and more contact with candidates, which in one of the particular campaigns that's being run right now is real rare. So contact with the candidate is almost nothing.
Yeah.
So I think that part can be good. The fact that non-white voters are splitting in larger ways, Republican and Democrat, when they have been almost solely pro-Democratic voters forever and ever, again, can make things more complicated for those parties speaking to voters, but they should be speaking to those voters, right? And making it worthwhile for Republicans to speak to them and making Democrats realize maybe they're not to be taken for granted. Those are good things, right?
Mm-hmm.
The cross-seating can also, cause more people in various neighborhoods to know someone who voted for someone else.
Yeah.
And that is, if maybe your kids play soccer together, but somebody who voted the other way. You guys come from basically the same neighborhood and socioeconomic class, but you have different ways of expressing that at the ballot box. And I think that is a little bit where we were when things were healthier, right?
Mm-hmm.
That politics wasn't everything and that people in different neighborhoods had different beliefs and that was okay. And we weren't quite so sorted so scientifically yet.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's a little bit of going back to that is part of this. Honestly, it's mostly a working class shift to Republicans away from Democrats.
I see it in my neighborhood, which is very middle class neighborhood. There's more Harris Walz signs than I would have expected. And I'm not in Austin. Everyone will be like, you're in Austin, right. But we're in a red county outside of Austin, a pretty red one. And it's interesting to see that, this is kind of the America that I said this on Twitter and someone was like, yes, it's nice to know that the functionally retarded can live by themselves. I was like, oh, Twitter, never change. The comments were what you would expect from X or Twitter or whatever. And, but it is I like knowing that we can all live amongst each other and our kids all play at the playground and go to school and everyone's fine and we take care of each other locally and everyone's very kind and it doesn't feel like what I experience online at all. This is also another piece I'm writing about. The two parties feel very different, or this election and the two Americas that everyone always talks about. It feels like actually the very online and I would say normies are not very online and doing stand-up comedy a lot now and being in that regular touch with audiences and doing jokes that would probably do well on somewhere like X, but do not you can tell the audience just doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So that has been, and I have a lot of touch with just normies, being a mom out in the burbs. So that feels like a big gap to me too, that I'm not sure. It feels like normie America is kind of 5 years behind the very online America.
And thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Maybe they can still be saved. I think you're right. There is a gap. And one of the differences to me between sort of elite and / very online groups of people versus normal people is, and particularly in the press, you run into this a lot, is that I think a lot of normal people are not necessarily super fans of Kamala or Trump, right? Or
Mhm.
even of each party. What they recognize is what to my mind is a very normal thing, which is, hey, neither of these choices is great. I'm going to see if I can figure out which one is best for my family, and I'm going to make that choice. But I don't feel that it's as apocalyptic as these other people are telling me, or B, that one side has a monopoly on moral behavior or the correct decisions, right? A lot of people just see that they're being given kind of two lame choices, and that's what they're operating in. When you talk to people who cover the news, which is a terrible way to look at this if you're covering the news, their self-regard for their own side is so high that it completely blinds them to what is driving a voter who says, I'm not sure which one of these is a better choice. Like the Harris Walz obviously sign. Have you seen those? Or just says
No.
Harris Walz obviously. Now, most people in elite press basically have that feeling, right?
Right.
You can't cover the race and the motivations of normal voters if you have so much regard for your own side that you just eliminate the possibility that it would be a reasonable decision to vote the other way.
I mean, didn't they learn anything from 2016? You would think that they would have been. That's wild to me. I think Matt Walsh, I think, was tweeting a video that was going around today about voters just not caring about January 6th. And
Yeah.
I was having a conversation with a bunch of lesbians last night, not the people who you would think would be having this conversation about how January 6th, there's so much anger towards the government that there is this sense of, well, at least they took their frustration out on the people that they are mad at and not like a local business that they burned down that's a mom and pop. So there was this sense, which is funny to me because I kind of had that sense where I was like, oh, my uncle always calls it a riot of buffoons, which I think is like a perfect, I think words, play fast and loose with a lot of words, insurrection, genocide, all these things. And it did feel that way to me, but I don't know. I feel like I've kind of always probably been one of those people that's dangerously maybe underplayed how serious it was.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, it's a strange thing because I feel that, and I don't want to be reactionary about it. But some of it is that in real time, it was genuinely disturbing and scary. And what is happening here? And why can't the president just jump on Twitter and tell everybody to chill? Like, what's speaking of this, the extremely online. And so a lot of that was disturbing.
Right.
And the threats being made to people were disturbing and the violence that happened was disturbing. But it's a more complicated story than that because not every single person who's been prosecuted was involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
The disturbance lasted, and the protest, I don't know what the term we want to use is. The riot happened and the slowing of the process happened for several hours and was quelled. And I appreciate all the folks who did that. It was also sort of whiplashy to have a lot of friends who work in law enforcement who were suddenly heroes on that day when they had been the worst people in the world for the entirety of 2020. It was a real strange shift to hear that from Nancy Pelosi after that news cycle. But this attempt to make it everything and to make it 9/11, I think people just call BS on. Like they just don't feel it that way, even though they believe it was very serious. And to some people, maybe even me, disqualifying to Trump as president, like to be the president, right? It's complicated. And part of the reason it's complicated is because people are mad at the powers that be, and they feel that they have abused their positions, and they feel that they've been unfair to people in 1,000 different ways, and that no one ever is made to account for it. So when they look at this situation, they go, and it is literally whataboutism. They go, but y'all, made us not go to church or visit our loved ones in the hospitals for a year and a half. So like, I'm not sure I can be this upset about this for this long.
And there's bipartisan rage. I think this is where, when you talk about like the reactionaries and the cranks and the people like how did RFK and Tulsi and all of these people end up on Trump's side? But it is the more anti-establishment people who are frustrated with the fact that a lot of people in Congress are making money in the stock market and trading. And this is not a phenomenon that is unique to one side or the other. There's rage at all, the whole system. And weirdly, those people seem, I could be wrong, they seem to be getting caught up by the right. That there seems to be like the people who feel that way, I feel, are leaning more right. The people who are mad at the whole system and feel like the whole thing is corrupt. Because I don't know how you can hold, which is the weird thing about the Democrats, is that they will say that and they'll hold that point of view, and then they'll vote for the people who have been in charge the most time out of the past 12 or 16 years or whatever. I saw this all the time in California where they're like, the system is corrupt, so we must vote for the people who have been in charge of this system forever and have a uniparty, and you cannot get outside of it. And there's no way to hold anyone accountable and no checks and balances. It's like weird psychology. I don't get it.
That's the Kamala argument.
Yeah.
Right? She says, everything's terrible, guys. This is terrible. Tim Walz said hilariously on the trail the other day, like, we can't take another 4 years of this. It's like, okay,
I agree.
But they're trying to say we're the way to turn the page, even though we're those guys, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder what you think about these sort of Tulsi, RFK, House and Habit. Woo-woo caucus. I'll just use woo-woo caucus, which is the sort of derogatory term that The Atlantic used for this gathering of those types of sort of health-focused, outside the mainstream figures who gathered.
This was a Democratic position forever, though.
I know.
I'm a weed-smoking freaking hippie from my past. This is what I don't understand. I don't understand how they're suddenly calling people weirdos like they're mean girls, and they're using woo as some kind of freaking, I'm like, this was all go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm interested in who this demographic is and what it means, because I am far more woo-woo than I used to be, right? Like I have gone through an evolution that was partially driven by my own birth experiences and then like accelerated by the COVID times and public health just being so incredibly unreliable and lying to people and really, really awful bullies in many, many, many instances. And so it was sort of accelerated by that. So yes, I do think there's a sense in which this woo-woo health area is coded right now, which is so odd because it was left for so long. I call myself, like, am I like a red-pilled hippie? What am I? I don't know. But I wonder how much pull that argument, that form of thinking has in an electorate. Are these people likely voters? Are they low propensity voters? Is RFK actually bringing them into the Trump coalition? I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I would say beware of making fun of the woo-woo caucus because it's full of a bunch of suburban women and they have a lot of power.
Do they? I mean, I think we do, because I'm literally the demographic that they're going after. I'm an independent. Right. I'm a suburban mom. And I don't know if I can hold my nose and vote for Trump, even though yesterday on my like behind the paywall podcast, I was like, I'm voting for Trump because fuck it. That's like my new mantra. I'm like, it's totally irrational. But I'm just at this point where every time I see something, it is definitely reactionary. So I have to beware of that. But I don't know if I actually can. And I definitely can't do, like, Walz just creeps me out. I don't know why they lean into this, like, hey, he's just like the gym teacher. I'm like, well, I don't know what kind of gym teachers you guys had, but all of mine were creepy.
Didn't have a great track record.
Yeah. They all wanted us to climb the ropes and look up our shorts. That's literally what I think of when you try and present him that way. Like Coach Walz. I'm like, oh, so he's a pedophile. Great. And, you know, his track record with LGBTQ stuff in Minnesota is a little like unsettling for me as a mom that has been somewhat radicalizing for me in the past.
Yeah, that's another issue where people have gotten sort of thrown into the right coded world just by, again, can we cuss on this podcast?
Yeah.
Sometimes shit is worth reacting to, right? If I'm reactionary, maybe you're doing something worth reacting to. And that is like when you reference, you know, some of those high school and middle school policies in Minnesota. Yeah. If you're a mom, you should be reacting to that, just like you should be reacting to the fact that they closed schools down for 18 months. You're not a crank.
Yeah. And yet we didn't see any kind of punishment for that in 2022, which makes me believe that guys like Walter Kern are right. And even Jesse Kelly, who's like, I knew what time it was in America in 2020, that people liked it. They liked it. They thought that the people were doing the best that they could, that it's actually a much smaller number. I think from what I've seen from my RFK friends, they're just going to write in RFK, you know, and then, which it's weird. There are a lot of people, and I probably am one of those people who don't, and this is something I've been trying to wrestle with, where I don't want Kamala to win, but I can't vote for Trump, but ostensibly I want him to win.
No, I'm in the exact same position. And I find
myself in this fucked up position, and that makes me feel like a coward because I'm like, so just fucking. That's why it's like vote for Trump because fuck it.
Well, I keep asking myself this too, right? If I when I look through my reasons, I'm like, look, I actually think that his instincts on foreign policy largely would probably make the world at least a marginally safer place.
Well, he's a little bit of a loose cannon, which I think is kind of good.
No, that's where it comes from. And, you know, my liberal friends would think that's an insane position, and I could try to explain it to them. But, you know, if I actually think that, am I obligated to vote for him then? I don't know. But I'm in the same place you are, which is that I don't really think that he necessarily deserves to win. I think she definitely deserves to lose. And what do you do with that? I don't know.
You've all heard me screaming women for years now, and I'm a big advocate for women in general and women's health in particular. That's why I love Quest's line of medical tests specifically focused on women's health issues. They offer a basic women's health profile test that gives you a snapshot of your current health and wellness, women's hormone tests designed to identify imbalances associated with various health conditions, and specific tests for fertility, thyroid function, and even your menopause stage. You can take a perimenopausal test to help you determine if you're entering perimenopause, an early menopausal panel, and a postmenopause panel. I know you'll see Instagram jokes like, oh, if you know the lyrics to this song, you might be in perimenopause. And you'll laugh and go, haha, I probably am in perimenopause. But are you? You want the actual data. This is all such important knowledge for women to have because it can affect the way you work out. It can affect what you should be eating. And just now they're starting to really realize how much all of these hormones play into us losing weight, keeping bone density. All of this information is so important to you. Your results are delivered online quickly and discreetly, and you get all of this information without a doctor's visit. Ladies, prioritize your health and use the affiliate link below to get 25% off and find answers to the multitude of health questions you may have. Just click the link below and the discount is automatically applied. I'm excited to announce a new partnership we have with a company I love, Caliber, a strength training and nutrition coaching program that's completely personalized to you. So I've been using this now for about a month, and through their app, you get paired with a personal trainer, an actual person and not an AI bot, on a fitness program and nutrition plan completely customized to your goals, whether it's muscle building, weight loss, ditching the dad bod, or the mom bod in my case, for much less than it costs to work with a personal trainer at the gym. She's awesome. She's so responsive. That's the thing that I love about this. It's actually been life-changing for me. The app is incredible. It has videos that show you how to do all the workouts, and you can actually reach out to your coach if you have any questions and send them videos of you doing the workout so they can give you form feedback. Caliber takes a science-based approach, which leads to faster, more sustainable results. Even doing this for a month, I can see myself getting stronger. We've arranged a special deal for our Walk-Ins Welcome audience where you get $100 off the first 3 months. It's a really good rate, you guys, for what you're getting. And you get a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not happy with the program. Go to caliberstrong.com/walk-ins or click the link below to get signed up.
She's not speaking to any of my concerns.
Yeah, nor mine. Why can't, what are your reasons that you can't vote for him?
Well, so the question is like, does he pass the bar of fit to be president? And does the fact that one of the things I say is like Kamala has to pass this plausibility test that I know the left is mad that Trump doesn't have to pass. Now he still has to pass it with me, but he doesn't have to pass a plausibility test for a lot of people because he literally was already the president, right? Like he's hit the bar. But there are many things I think about him that don't make him suited to it. I would prefer that the president of the United States or someone running for that job would do at least as much preparation for a TV hit or have at least as much information about policy before they talk about something as like I do on a Tuesday afternoon. And he's never taken it that seriously. Now he has other talents that I do not have, obviously. I am not the president. I never have been. I think he plays fast and loose about free speech. He said the other day, he said the stuff about flag burning and that people should be arrested for that. He said the other day that, what was he saying? The way they talk about, I can't remember what it was. The way they talk about the Supreme Court, they should be thrown in jail. Now, is he joking? Maybe, but a person who is trying to be president probably shouldn't be saying that.
But he's always done that. I feel like in that instance, and this is the hard thing because I did some joke about Trump saying something about Pence and everybody's like, he didn't actually say that. It was actually, even my husband who fact checks everything is like, it was actually Hammerstein and da-da-da-da. I'm like, and this thing the other day when I saw the Roe v. Wade clip, it was like, was that taken out of context or was he talking about the way people talk about Supreme Court justices, in which case, yes, they're like, you shouldn't be allowed to just threaten the justice's life.
Yeah, like if the talking he's talking about is an assassination threat, then yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And I love how people are like, oh, look, he's not doing as many rallies. It's like, the guy's been nearly shot twice.
Well, that's the other thing. Speaking of reactionary.
Shot once and almost shot again.
Yes. Speaking of reactionary, there is a part of me that's mad that someone wants to take my choice away by killing him and has tried twice to do that. I am also mad at the fact that the intelligence community and the operations of the government and the justice system have been used improperly against him on several occasions. That doesn't mean I like Trump, but it means I do not trust these people who tell me that Trump is the problem because he wants to use the intelligence community and government systems and justice system to go after his enemies. I feel like he's not my concern on that front after watching you guys for many years. So some of my thought is, I don't want to reward their bad behavior, either assassins or people who are trying to take him out in, more sophisticated ways through the New York justice system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. The answer is I don't know. And I kind of feel like it's a cop-out too, but I really don't actually know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, no, I know. I feel the same way. And it's funny because I keep going, who out there is torn? And I'm like, it's not really people who are torn between Kamala and Trump. It's people who are torn I think the Kamala, we know who, no one's making that decision. Who's making that decision? Someone really trying to, I think it's more like you or me, where it's Trump or no one.
Right.
I didn't vote in 2020 I voted down ballot, but I just didn't even vote.
Same.
Because I couldn't do it. And
this will be my third, if I write in or don't vote the top of the ticket again, this will be my third election as an adult where I didn't vote for a presidential candidate of the major party. That's saying something for a political junkie. I mean, I'm doing this work, but they have not convinced me.
Yeah, and it does feel like that is something I've been writing about, because I've been trying to work through this in a column that is completely incoherent right now. And it really is. But it's how I process things. And it is like, used to be, well, somebody needs to kind of convince me I want to be somewhat inspired by a candidate or feel like I'm making a choice. But now it feels like I actually don't know which candidate to be more afraid of. And I lean definitely towards the left.
That's a pretty clear way to put it. I think my concern now is which of these two people and the apparatus that is behind them do I fear more as a disruptor of norms I think are important. For instance, Kamala's just straight up said she wants to pack the Supreme Court. I can never vote for somebody who thinks that's a reasonable solution. And this is something that 4 years ago they floated in 2020, and even most of the press was like, whoa, 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 what are we talking about? Court packing. And now it's just like a random story on a Tuesday. And Biden writes an op-ed, and Kamala's like, oh yeah, I agree with that. And I'm like, no. So that, to me, that is a huge danger to democracy. And I know the left doesn't recognize it as such because it's their way of sort of strong-arming the system to do their bidding. But that is a threat. And so I'm doing the same. I'm weighing which of these is more of a threat from my perspective.
And even like AOC and Hillary Clinton coming out and saying, we need to censor the media and stuff like that. I mean, that they do have a much larger finger on the scales. I see it even just as a person on YouTube who has center right-leaning content. It is often, we're the ones tripping all the algorithmic whatever traps that you get thrown into, and then it's like you're in a black hole now and no one can see you even if you're there. It's weird. It is weird because part of me feels like it's cowardly, and I think it might be. It might.
Maybe it is, but also one of the things, and I've argued this for years, even though I used to vote for a major party candidate. Part of your freedom is to opt out,
right?
This thing where the left is like, oh, we should have compulsory voting. It's like, okay, I know you guys want compulsory everything, but right. we're not doing compulsory voting because that's not freedom.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, the co-opting of freedom for the Harris-Walz ticket, that after, look, you can argue a lot of things, but you cannot argue that the folks who told you couldn't go to church or visit your grandparents or go to school or have a cookout with more than 5 people, even outdoors. It was like one of the most sweeping removals of basic everyday civil liberties for the large swaths of the population for a year and a half, 2 years. And everyone's just like, remember the freedom, guys? And I'm like, no, I remember the psychos. I remember you being psychos.
But they don't, that's what Michigan surprised me in 2022. That California didn't. It surprised me that there was no real punishment for that. And maybe it'll happen now, but I would think that it would have happened in 2022.
So here's what I wonder, because I think you're right. To the extent that there was punishment, it basically was Terry McAuliffe in Virginia lost to Glenn Youngkin. There also was in Nevada a Republican governor won there partly because of the draconian nature of the guy before him. So those were 2. I do think Republican governors who performed well and favored freedom in Florida and Georgia, and Iowa's another one, they have been rewarded for their good behavior, but there has not been nearly enough punishment for bad behavior. I think that's sort of the dynamic we're in. And then I wonder if there's just a lag time on this. It could be that people are done with it. They put it out of their minds. They were traumatized and they don't want to worry about it anymore. It could also be that we have a lot of trauma as a society that we have not properly dealt with, that has not really landed. And I'm kind of wondering if that manifests along the way. I don't know.
Because this is the first election, which is why I'm so interested in it, since pandemic, post the lockdowns, since the first election for president since January 6th, since Roe v. Wade, since the assassination attempt. I mean, there has been a lot of attempts. There has been a lot, since October 7th, which was a huge realignment. And for the whole world, it feels like, and very revealing. There's been so much Ukraine. There's been so much stuff that's gone on. And I really wonder, I think it is, the establishment is very comfortable when people are kind of afraid. It is, I can see why I see these quotes all the time, like, well, the establishment gave you post World War II peace and all this stuff. Like, this is what the machine gave you. And I don't know. I agree. I think that I'm very curious. I don't know, like, what's motivating people, in this moment.
I wish people were mad about it. This is I wish people were madder about the COVID era mistakes. Partly because I don't want those people in charge anymore and making those decisions, and partly because I think it's just important to have an accounting of what actually happened. But I do have to be cognizant about it because I care much more about it than other people do, right? And I don't want to overread my concern. But there are pockets of people who maybe the larger issue is just the total gutting of public trust.
Yeah.
Because yes, there were people who liked what happened during COVID. They liked being told what to do. But there's a lot of people out there who put that on their pile of, you people are not to be trusted.
Yeah.
And the public trust part is, the betrayal of public trust part maybe is the part that lands later or that becomes a growing problem. But
I also wonder too, because you also had the great kind of sorting of people leaving. So people like me, I mean, looking around at Austin, it's just people who fled a lot of these blue states during the time that it was insanely locked down. You see it in Florida, you see it in Georgia. So there was this also physical moving around that was happening pretty much around the midterms. And I don't know that we've seen that really reflected either. There were a lot of people who moved here and now they moved back to California. Not a lot, but there was a pretty good number, I think, that came here and they were like, it's too hot, I'm going back to California. And I'm not sure. I was guilty of overestimating my concern and rage at the decisions that were made during COVID, being in California in particular, which was very locked down, and underestimating Roe v. Wade and how that being overturned right before the midterms would have this massive. I really underestimated it, and I worry that I will do that again in this election.
Well, yeah, no, I think it's worth worrying about, and you'll note that one of the reasons I think that one of those lands and the other one doesn't is because one gets concentrated critical media coverage, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and the COVID restrictions largely a product or have fans on the left, which means media coverage is very light of the mistakes made during that time. So I think that does change public perception, unfortunately. I don't think it's a fair way to cover what happened during COVID. And we felt like we were sort of screaming into the void to some extent during that time. I will say, to your point about the electoral shifts and the shifts of actual people, places like Florida and Georgia in particular, part of having a competent governor in those places means they have an operation that is invested in identifying those people who were radicalized, who came to that state for something that looks very different from the freedom that Tim Walz is selling you with his snitch line in Minnesota. And identifying those people and making them into their voters.
Right.
That's what you get when you get a competent governor in those places who's doing good policy and has in the case of Kemp in Georgia, a 60+%, or Youngkin in Virginia, 60+% approval rating.
Wow.
So I do think that can be interesting in those well-run states that have competent state parties that are battlegrounds, like a Georgia. That matters.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of fascinated by all of it, and it's weird that I'm like, oh, this doesn't matter yet. As I sit here talking to you, I realize we represent exactly those people that they should be trying to convince. And the right has a real woman problem, though. They just do. And they don't want to see it. And every time I point it out, it was like when I put it on Twitter, I was like, the right has a woman problem. Then Schlichter was like, maybe we don't want your whore vote. And I was like,
sold.
But so I was at this kind of libertarian-ish event. I would say it was like a tech event. So it's, the like whatever the tech bros are these days. Mm-hmm. And there were all these young women, like millennial and Gen Z women there. And I was just like picking their brains about everything. And they're definitely not as left as I would have thought, but they're probably too online because they're very online and they liked my podcast. So obviously they spend time like in the discourse, and they are so turned off. They're like, I cannot vote for the right. I'm so turned off by the way. And even if it's just a general guilt by association, the whole way that the manosphere talks about women online, or you'll see these things. I mean, they even pointed to that tweet of mine where it went viral, and they're like, the responses to that, I'm like, it's not representative. It's probably 12-year-olds, but it is dark and it does exist. And it's why when I came from the left and the right was like, yay, we got ya, I was like, I don't trust you guys, because I was writing for Playboy and I saw what you were saying to me in the comments when I was a left-wing Playboy writer. So I know exactly how you feel about a woman like me. And and this is what I've been saying a lot, and I want to write about it. There are a lot of former sluts in the suburbs.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
we talked about this one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on Instagram. I would love for anyone I know it's my algorithm, but these things have millions of views, and they are all geared towards former party girls who now live in the suburbs. There's massive numbers of these women.
There's huge numbers of them. Now they're just moms with kids.
Now they're just, there are all these memes like me thinking of when I used to be a party girl and now I have a great husband and kids. Like men,
or just like cleaning up your toddler's toys to ludicrous. This is a common theme.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Or like taking the mac and cheese bag and flicking it. This is a druggy thing. Where it's like when I'm a mom, but I used to party, and they're like, I'm like, I relate so much to this.
I think so. When it comes to reaching women voters, or just like women citizens, like not about winning their vote, I just worry so much that by both sides, they're just being so ill-served.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the issues with that is that you shouldn't look for your meaning in life or your salvation from politics or politicians. However, policy does matter.
It does.
Right? And society is changing, and women have different choices and make different choices than they did in the past. And for many in the manosphere, right, that it seems unfair to me to say, well, this is an indictment of this liberal culture that these women, are turning out this way, and they did their whoring in their 20s and all that stuff. Well, if there's no redemption arc for that, where a woman does become a mom in the suburbs and enjoys a much different type of life, then what's the point of you? Like, what are you even doing? I don't like, it seems unrealistic to me to say, oh, all of society is drowning in this hedonism. But also, if you drown in the hedonism, there's no way we're ever going to rescue you, and we don't care about you and your trash. That's not good.
In your body. Yeah, that's what the women kept bringing up. They were like, all that body count discourse and everything, which like the average woman, it's like 6 dudes. This is just the average. It's not like, I think these guys think it's like 20. And then you've got Haktua with a number 3 podcast in the freaking world. You know, I'm like, the dirty South is a thing too, as you know.
I have a little confession, which is that I think she's kind of sweet and charming.
She is sweet and charming. And I also think that she is America's, like I did a whole dumpster fire about how she is evidence of the greatness of America, that you can go viral. And then, although there are all these memes now that my friends and I have been liking of like me trying to make a living and then like the Hawk to a girl raking in millions. But I'm like, good for her, dude.
Yeah.
You could only do this in America. There's nowhere else that this is going to happen to you. This is the most American story ever.
Yeah.
But it is like I wrote a piece about this a while ago. It didn't get, it feels like once again, whenever I write about things where I'm like, hey, both of you guys suck. It's just like crickets. But I was like, neither party really gives a shit about women. I just don't feel that they have a real problem on the right reaching young women. And if they don't address that soon, they're never going to win an election again.
Now I'm gonna beat a dead horse on this, but the cat lady thing is just like, why?
Why would you go after Taylor Swift?
Insane. Why do you have to be needlessly mean about a demographic that, by the way, if you are somebody who believes that the left is, that women are often ill-served by the philosophies and the policies of the left, which I do, why are you crapping on them for having ended up maybe not as happy as they could be, right?
Yeah.
Without some of the opportunities that they could have. I think that is obviously not a way to reach people. And I do think that the left serves women badly in many ways by making abortion the only issue we're allegedly supposed to care about. I have a lot of thoughts about tax policy and economics, and I always found that very off-putting as a young woman, that was supposed to be my number one priority no matter what. I always found that very odd. Like I didn't have other thoughts in my head. And then the idea that, I think we've talked about this before, that I think the right can be more open to, or religious communities can be more open to, the idea that like being a mom and a wife as part of your life trajectory is incredibly fulfilling and can be amazing and should not be treated as this sort of domestic jail in this era when we have access to all sorts of opportunities and flexibility and interesting ways to cobble life together. It ain't always perfect, but I do think that is a message that you can send to people without crapping on them for the decisions that they've made or for ways that they have lived in a society that hasn't valued that, or they've been told that's not valuable.
Yeah, I also think erasing women as just in general, as like that binary sex is not a thing, is not great for women either.
Yeah.
So
the women's sports one really gets me as a female athlete. That one, just
the men and women prisons makes me like actually hurts my. This is what I mean, where I'm like, you don't care, and you guys just remember what a woman is suddenly when you need to, and then forget when it drives me crazy. So aside from how
that's another source of my reactionary streak is. Things like that are so insane, and the women's sports thing is just so on its face wrong that, sometimes I do think about voting for people who I don't necessarily like, who nonetheless look at that and go, well, that seems crazy. And I'm like, yeah, you might be a crazy person, but you're right about that being crazy.
As I've been talking through this whole podcast and listening to you, I'm realizing that it's not really, it is a reactionary vote. That is the feeling that I have. And it's not because fuck it. I'm voting for Trump because fuck you.
Yeah.
And it is like a obviously very reactionary thing, but there are so many ways in which I feel like the Democratic Party has minimized my concerns as a woman,
right,
and a mom and a citizen of America, that I don't really know what else. It's like I feel kind of backed into a corner on this one. That's how I'm feeling. I do feel like an animal that's like being backed into a corner where
yeah.
also, why do they keep trying to kill him?
Just stop. Yeah, y'all gotta stop. It's
I do also have that, like, I'm going to vote for the guy they keep trying to kill, because it does
every time
feel
it
like
happens, I'm like, well, now I'm pissed off because I have a choice between two people or not voting at all, but you're trying to take one of my choices away. And when there's repeated attempts to take one of my choices away by either killing him or throwing him in jail, it makes me angry.
And it
would make me angry if it was her. Like, I'd be upset.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd probably be more like, why do they keep trying to take her out? Why?
Yeah.
I don't know. All the Diddy stuff coming out, everything is so dark. It's so dark. The Diddy stuff is so dark.
I mean, the one thing I think we can take away from any of these celebrity stories, or I got two things. One, maybe don't take advice from them on who to vote for because they don't have great judgment. Number two, never send your kids to any mogul's house ever, no matter how successful it might eventually make your children and how talented your children are. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
I just always think of that Chappelle bit where he's like, those kids got to learn. There's no such thing as free trip to Hawaii. It's not funny, but it is
a little funny.
It's funny. Yeah, just all the stuff that comes out in the heels of it and all the people who've been trying to say things for years. And then we were joking about this in the Dumpster Fire Writers Room because I'm like, if the past 5 years of covering this crap has taught me anything, it's that pedophiles are everywhere, and I do think they run the world. Like, I really didn't think that was true, and now I actually think it's
like
true.
The thing you're not allowed to think, and then you look around and you're like, but I keep finding out.
Yeah, like at what point so there was Epstein's Island and then there was Diddy's mansions. Like, where does this end? And it does seem like these people are all the powerful people, and
they all keep each other's secrets, and they all blackmail each other into shutting up, and then 10 years later you finally find out.
And I sound like a crazy person. And I sound like a crazy person. I mean, it's so true, though.
It's the curse.
It's so funny. On Dumpster Fire 2 weeks ago, I was like, if you had told 2015 Bridget about all the problems facing the world right now and everything that we're confronting, and then you would have said, Bridget, the solution to this is to vote for Donald Trump, I would have been like, oh, in the future, I go crazy. That's so sad. And maybe I've gone crazy. This is also the thing that I'm also perhaps coming to terms with.
Again, this is back to my point about self-regard blinding people, is if you are closer to voting for Donald Trump than you've ever been, and if I'm closer to voting for Donald Trump than I've ever been, even after all we've seen and all they've told us, perhaps they should do some introspection about what they haven't addressed that has made him a more palatable option than he used to be. Like, y'all should think about that.
Are you tired of wading through media misinformation, trying to figure out a news outlet's spin or bias on any given story? Ground News is the solution you didn't know you needed. Ground News is the most complete news comparison app. It lets you make sense of the news on your own terms by letting you easily compare how a story is covered by different sources across the political spectrum and around the world. Compare any news article you want, filtering it by bias, left, right, or center, by location, so you can understand how news is being covered around the world, and by time, knowing when the story was first reported and how the reporting has changed. I'm obsessed with these guys. I love their blind spot report because you don't think you have blind spots, and then you see this report and you're like, oh, yeah, I had no idea that even happened. Start seeing the news more clearly, find out the truth, and stay up to date with what's going on in the world with the Ground News app. Use our affiliate link below to get 15% off. That's Ground News. Use the link below to get 15% off. If you love Watkins Welcome, please consider becoming a subscriber to Phetasy.com to show your support. Phetasy relies on its supporters to continue creating the content you love, so if you can, please support us. It truly keeps the lights on and the content churning. Churning? And it keeps me going. You also get a multitude of exclusive subscriber content, so come join us. Go check it out. Phetasy.com, Phetasy.com. There's this unsettling part of me, and I don't even like speaking it out loud because, again, I sound like a crazy person, but I find myself going, well, they're just going to steal the election anyway.
Again, we have a teensy public trust problem. It's not it's a problem.
Yeah. And I find that it has infected my thinking over the past 4 years in particular.
I'm a little worried just about how counts are going to happen and how the narratives are going to be spun. I wish that everyone would have learned from Florida post 2000 because Florida really got its shit together.
Yeah.
Counts fast, counts accurately. And you know what? Everyone in Florida feels good about the fact that their vote was counted and that these lag times and the stupid ways they do things. Can we just get DeSantis to do like a clinic for everyone? Or Jeb could do it.
Like the power outages and like, oh, suddenly there's a leak.
It's just,
what?
It's not great. It's not great. And it's not going to be great.
Yeah. Well, that's what Maggie and I were talking about. She was like, if I knew, I think a lot of the feeling of wanting to turn away from this and not want to, I've been feeling like I just want to check out, but then it's like, there won't be any real relief after the election, no matter what happens.
No, you think you're getting downtime, but you're not really.
I'm like, oh, at least then there will be an election and we'll all just what? I'm too afraid to even consider it.
The other thing is like, let's say she wins. She will have a divided government. And that's just going to make the press all pissy that she can't do whatever she wants, when in fact, that's what the founders intended. And divided government is good. And so everybody's just going to be like all angry that everyone's not giving Kamala what she needs. But you know what? I don't want her spending another $4 trillion on my behalf. So I'm not going to give her what she needs.
It's nuts.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Oh, man. I'm so glad to have you in the space, though. I'm glad we can have these honest conversations about our
possible cop-out vote. I don't know what to do.
Because there is a part of me that's like, principles used to matter. Do they? But people would argue that I'm actually putting personality over principles, that I should look at the principles that I hold dear about this country, like freedom of speech and who's going to not confiscate all the guns and all of the not stack the Supreme Court and what I believe. Those are the principles I should be looking at, and I should put aside my personal feelings about an individual and vote for the person I believe will defend those principles, not my principles about what kind of person should run the country.
See, that was pretty convincing when you said it. Now I could talk myself into the other direction right now, but like, I think there's a lot to that.
Yeah, my friend said I can't vote for Trump because I like mirrors. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah. Oh, and also there's this thing too where it's like, should I be so precious about my little vote, right? Like, oh, how precious is it really? Like, it is sort of, we're in a transactional environment. I'm not sure it's ever been a situation where you could cleanly, I mean, I would have loved to have voted for Reagan in like 84. I feel like that would have felt pretty good. But as it did for 49 states. So a lot of people were in that boat, but generally you're going to be voting for somebody you don't love that much.
That was like when the Pope came out and he said, this is a lesser of two evils. And I was like, oh, voting for the lesser of two evils in America is the Pope Catholic? Like, yeah. Welcome to what we've been doing forever.
That's what we do. That's what we do. I do think, I wish that there were, I wish that the Republican Party in the primaries had chosen a better leader to lead people who have these public trust issues, who are reactionary to some of the bad treatment. Now Trump supporters would say, well, that defeats the purpose because like you got to have him be the punishment in order to punish the people who did the bad things. And maybe that's true to some extent, although I think a DeSantis would have been on the COVID stuff a very nice accountability moment. But yeah, I do wish that a better leader of this movement where people could feel more at home because the personality issue would not be as large. I wish that had been a possibility, but I didn't win that fight. So
yeah, I was talking to my husband about this and I was like, I should write this piece of just like, I'm voting for Trump because fuck it. And he's like, yeah, and that comes with a lot of baggage. He's like that. Unfortunately, it would be like a nice, if you're really feeling that way, whatever. But if he's like that, just even saying that comes with so much baggage. And that's what's unfortunate about it, is that he himself just comes. I think easily I could have voted for somebody like DeSantis. He doesn't come with this like truckload of just baggage from whatever.
Well, I remember in 2020, I was slightly closer to voting for him than in 2016. And I didn't. And then January 6th happened and I was like, I'm glad I didn't vote for him. Right? Like I was
exactly.
Like, now you've done the thing. You've done the thing that would have made me regret it. So here we are.
Yeah. And that's always the fear too, is like the loose cannon side.
Yep.
You're like, well, I could vote for you and then you could lose and start a civil war.
I mean, we're not in a great place.
No, we're not. But it is interesting to me that because I think you and I do occupy, we're like weather vanes, being in this, like I can kind of sense which way the country's shifting based on which way I feel. And I definitely see like, I don't know. I wonder if people are just going to do what they did in 2016, which is be like, oh, cool. Anyways, I'm going to go vote for Trump. Like,
no, I think
just quietly vote for him.
I think there's a real possibility that a bunch of people get in that booth and they're like, fuck it. I'm voting for Trump.
Yeah. Michael Malice said this to me when we were, he's like, I don't even remember saying that to you, but that's really funny. He said if I was Trump's campaign manager, I would just tell him that his slogan should be vote for Trump because fuck it. And I'm like, it's so true, though. I think so many people are there.
It's basically the pitch. It's basically the pitch.
I really should write this piece. I should at least write about how I'm considering it for the first time, which obviously means I've gone crazy. Yeah. Or have I gone crazy? I mean...
Or have they driven you crazy? That's the question. You can blame the other side for having driven us here.
They've driven me. You did this to me.
You did this to me. I do feel like I shouldn't joke about it. I'm not joking about this stuff in real life, but I do feel like we are, as American citizens, particularly people who are critical thinkers who might be a little right of center and not trust the government entirely, our relationship with the press is emotionally abusive. Like I am just being gaslit constantly about things that are in front of my face. Yeah. And it's very uncomfortable and it makes me very mad. And that's a large part of the campaign for all of this.
There does seem like there's more infrastructure since 2020 that there wasn't in 2020. So we've got, Megyn Kelly went rogue, and you've got like the Free Press, and you have guys like in UK, Konstantin Kisin, and all. There does seem like that ecosystem, Substack in general, is thriving,
and they do huge numbers, sometimes much larger than like a CNN primetime audience, which is important. I mean, like I'm shooting low, but you know what I'm saying.
That's why I wonder. Yeah, I wonder. That's why I wonder too if you know, it's been interesting to me that Trump has been doing the kind of like podcast tour while Kamala's been, you know, working the machine and getting all the celebrities. And I'm like, that none of the people you need to vote for you are watching CNN or MSNBC.
Right.
They're listening to all these podcasts. That's actually where these people are.
So I wonder with that, because look, if there is a pipeline from Theo Von's audience to the ballot box, then that's huge for Trump. I think he's doing.
I think there is.
I know. I think he's doing the correct thing. That is a demographic that is pretty well made for him, young men in particular, who are inclined to vote for him more than Kamala, who feel like they're the cat ladies of the other side, right?
Totally.
They get crapped on constantly for their life choices, and the fact that society has put them in a situation where, frankly, they don't feel like they have direction or know how to please anyone. And so, you know, they've been spurned. The question is, how do you get them from podcast listener to voter, right? And I know that Trump's campaign and GOTV are more sophisticated than they've been in the past, but since those people are probably low propensity voters, it might be harder than other groups of people. But I think he's doing the right thing by trying to reach them. He has his own Twitch channel too.
Well, oh, wow. That's interesting to me. I was reading this whole article about how they always kind of misplace the like attention to the like getting the like majority of more of the Black vote or majority of more of the Hispanic vote, when really they just need to turn out a very small percentage of just like middle class, working class white guys who just don't vote. So I do wonder if that, like, I feel like it could be the thing that ends up, that could be the thing. It could be like those weird independent Theo Von. It was funny because during the whole, wasn't it during the DNC that was happening? Kind of,
yes.
Was it?
So I found that remarkable because he, by virtue of going on Theo Von's podcast and having a conversation Kamala Harris could never have, and doing it honestly, and in one of, you know, it's a better Trump moment to see him having that conversation with Theo Von, and it's a little vulnerable. He made news during the DNC that was positive to him, that broke through. I was very
went viral.
impressed. Yeah. I was very impressed.
It was everywhere. And I was like, that's kind of crazy, because you have this machine of the DNC with their big, giant, star-studded, you know, whatever it was, like, event. And then this little clip went viral. And as even like Helen Lewis at The Atlantic, who's no fan of Trump, was like, wrote about how it was like the most interested he'd seen in anyone. You know, he was very interested in Theo's perspective on this. Yeah, it's and this is when I'm like, I'm living in a simulation, because I've known Theo forever. And if you had told me that Trump would be the president and then the nominee and Theo would be interviewing him, I would have been like, no.
Well,
like that.
This is the thing that I don't think the Trump era doesn't get credit for, this part of Trump, which is that his accessibility is good. It's good. The fact that he goes on weird shows is good. Now, I guess Obama did a little bit with sort of weird YouTube stars occasionally. And I just think that him sort of lowering the barrier to entry for somebody who might interview the president is not a terrible thing. I like that he takes a lot of questions in a lot of places, and sometimes it hurts him. But that's what voters deserve to see. The Kamala avoidance campaign is very off-putting to me. I don't think she's capable of taking tough questions, and that's why she's not doing it.
One of the things I hear a lot from other independents who are kind of torn, like, who are feeling whatever, they say, and I hear this a lot in my letters from the politically homeless that we get, at least they know what Trump is thinking. Even if he's lying, he kind of believes his own lies, and he's lying outwardly. Whereas with Kamala, you have no idea what she's thinking, what she believes, who's actually really running the show. Yeah. At least with him, he's, he just like wears everything on his sleeve and doesn't, it's like completely uncensored.
Yeah. I think that there's something to that. And there's something to the fact that you keep seeing it show up in polling, particularly for undecided voters, is that they're saying, she's not telling us anything. I want to know more. And she absolutely refuses to tell them more. And I think that might bite her in the ass. They might just say it's not enough. And he was already the president. And we saw that.
At least we know better the devil you know.
Yeah.
It could be just the better the devil you know vote.
Or better the inflation we had. I mean, that's one of the major things. I mean, people just look back and go, well, that did feel better.
Well, it was like during those years, I kept asking people how they were worse off other than emotionally. And nobody ever had an answer for me. I'm like, other than psychologically, how the media has broken your brain and
emotionally
turned you
abusive
into
relationship. Yes.
Like turned otherwise great people into people who would wish death upon somebody. How are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. And for people who weren't caught up in that, which is a lot of normal voters, they go, yeah, I was okay.
Yeah.
I was okay. And that is an okay reason to vote for someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact, it's a good one. So
have we talked ourselves into we're going to be like MAGA hats next time we're on.
The number of women in our sort of like our demo
who
I
feel
sit
this
down
way
with for coffee or something, and they're like, are we all just going to do it? Like, we're going to do it, aren't we?
We're going to do it.
Are we going to do it?
Are we going to do it? And it is like these whisper networks, and women are very like influential among each other. And I kind of am like, well, if all my friends are doing it.
we're really giving the manosphere something to talk about. These dumb women just tell each other the same thing. They move in packs and they go to the bathroom together.
Listen, I'm voting exactly how my husband tells me, like I always do.
Obviously. I love that line, by the way, that like I couldn't possibly think anything outside of what he thinks.
I know. I mean, I know a lot of men. So just speaking from a lot of women that I've spoke to who are kind of like us, we're like, a lot of those husbands who never voted for Trump are definitely longtime listeners, first-time voters.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I have seen that demo as well. Yeah.
Quite a few are excitedly going to the ballot to vote for him.
Yep.
But I don't know. It's so much of it depends on, it's like 50,000 votes in some freaking swing states, you know, where whose votes matter.
I know.
You know more about this than me.
Well, and do the campaigns have a beat on who those votes are? Right? That's the other thing. Is like, yeah, we know that last time it was 40,000 votes across these counties. That it's likely to be similar. But Kamala Harris, the one thing she did do that Biden was incapable of is that she changed the map. So places like Arizona and Nevada that seemed basically out of question, out of the realm of possibility for Biden, are not for her. So that means that Trump has to spend a lot more time figuring out, are those the places I'm targeting voters? And he hasn't been super scientific about that in the past, whereas Democrats are very scientific about it. So we'll see.
Where are you going to watch the election?
Oh gosh, I'll probably just be at my house. I don't know. They might have me on
like
TV,
hold
I
up.
suppose. But like, I think a couple political junkie friends might come over and just like have some cocktails and let the chips fall where they may.
I'm sure we won't know for freaking weeks. I mean, why can't we just do it the way they do it, like in Egypt, where you have to dye your finger and like go cast your vote? Like, I did it.
We should know fast. It's like, I'm saying morally, the correct thing to do is to let people know quickly and efficiently and correctly what happened. And it's very sad that many states can't do that. It's very bad for democracy, actually.
You are really somebody who's been through so much in your life, and you are very resilient. And so what advice do you have for people who might be feeling, I think a lot of people too are just struggling and they like don't want to even tune into any of this.
Yeah, I think it's actually good not to tune in too much. I think one of the things that makes me decent at my job is that I actually do spend a lot of time with my kids, touching grass, doing normal people things.
Mhm.
And if you are too online and if you are too stewed in this, you will lose perspective and you will get unhappier. I mean, there's quite a lot of evidence that spending your day on a screen is not the best way to improve your mental health.
Mhm.
So part of my job is just to know things about the news cycle and to study when I need to, but let go of the idea that I have to know every single fact and every single reaction within seconds, right? And I think, when we need to talk about, like, I've been in real times of crisis. And in real times of crisis, and I mean, you sort of referenced it, but in 2015, I lost my first husband in a cycling accident, and I was 7 months pregnant at the time. And so, times of crisis can really narrow your funnel for what you're
Mhm.
able to handle. And I think finding helps you find the things that matter, the things that you need to say no to. I got a lot better at saying no during that time of crisis. I got a lot better at asking for help during that time of crisis. And I got a lot better at identifying the things that made me happy and that were actually important. And it turned out that the election, even though it mattered to me, was not among the most important things.
Yeah.
Right. And my values remained important, and the things I believe remained important, and teaching them my children remained important, but maybe not the day-to-day news cycle, right? So I think
Mhm.
that kind of perspective is helpful, and you can feel that in your own life, even with smaller kinds of crises. Um, so I think that's a good lesson. I do think that just giving yourself a break from this stuff. I'm not sure how much evolutionarily we were supposed to take in news-wise. Not this much. So I think giving yourself a break is important. Um, and yeah, resilience sometimes is just, and I hate to be trite, but it's literally putting one foot in front of the other. And it is going outside for a walk. It's eating some protein. It's trying not to drinking more water than wine is what I always say to people who are in crisis. And doing those simple things will remind you that that's like we're moving through life. We're not stuck. We're making it. And in small, that feels better every day.
Are you religious?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, I am a person of faith, and I did feel like in that time of my life, like obviously I wasn't very excited with God.
Mhm.
In fact, one time it was probably about a week after Jake died, and I felt like my water broke, and my water had broken on my first baby, so I kind of knew the feeling.
Mhm.
And I remember going into my room and like pointing at the ceiling and being like, "You listen to me, Jesus." I literally cannot handle this right now.
Yep.
So whatever is happening, I need you to fix that because I'm carrying this baby to term. And
Mhm.
my midwives detected nothing wrong. So either I prayed for a miracle and it was a miracle, or I just had prenatal incontinence, which I mistook for my water breaking. But either
Mhm.
way, I was protected from that particular eventuality. And I think one of the things about being a person of faith in a situation like that is yes, you're angry, but even in a dark place, my faith tells me God is for me. Right.
Mm.
And the scripture that I always used, even though I didn't believe it at the time, is Jeremiah 29:11, which is that I have a plan for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans for hope and a future. And I'm paraphrasing a bit, but I didn't actually believe that when I prayed it, but my life has become something I could never have imagined in the wake of that tragedy. And my children are happy and healthy, and they have a father who adopted them, and they have two new siblings. And so it's never to say that the old version of my life was worse or this one is better, but could it be there was a plan to prosper me and not to harm me? So
Wow.
yeah,
That's I have such a yeah, that's moving to me.
it's a hard, I mean, it's a thing that doesn't make sense right?
Faith
It's a
is
hard,
not
right.
logical.
It's not really supposed to make sense.
Yeah.
And some of it is just letting go of the idea that I'm supposed to understand this
Yeah.
because it felt so deeply unfair and wrong and horrific, as many
Yeah.
things do in life.
Jaron always says to me, my husband, we talk a lot about faith and our kind of weird, like the logical part of our brains is like, what a ridiculous idea. While
Right.
the evidence of something in our life is everywhere.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, at the end of the day, though, do you like yourself more when you believe or when you don't? It's like, are you a better person when you believe in God and behave as if God exists and loves you, or are you like, who's the better version of you? What version makes you feel better? And that's actually a very analytical, it's kind of an easy way for me to get my mind around it when I'm struggling. Yeah. But what is your biggest defect of character?
That's a good question. I think this is like this is going to sound like a little bit of a cop out because it's not like a serious thing, but I feel like it affects my daily life, which is I really am quite bad at knowing what I can fit into a day, what I can fit into any given period of time, how to communicate that to other people, as you may have noticed when you're trying to schedule me for a podcast. And although I always say that in my professional life and personal life with this particular character flaw, or perhaps it's a brain chemistry issue, that I'm a pain in the ass, but I try not to be an asshole, right? Like you're going to have to chase me down a little bit, but I will give you what you need, and I will be nice about it while I'm doing it. And eventually, once I'm sort of into the process, but I feel like that can be disrespectful of other people's time. It can make people feel rejected when I'm not trying to make them feel rejected. It can make me give short shrift to things I need to be working more deeply on because I tried to fit in too many things. And I'm trying to work on it. My husband is like very good at time management and executive function, and I am opposite of that. And it has very many upsides, like that I can talk for an hour off the top of my head because my brain does this, but it does not know what time it is or what time the kids are getting picked up or who's doing that. So that is something I feel like I work on every day.
What's your biggest asset?
I genuinely enjoy people. And I'm genuinely curious about why they believe the things that they believe. And I think in this day and age, particularly in this political climate, that can be a plus. And it can hopefully be good for society. And maybe it could be a model for how other people talk to people. I'm not trying to convert people to my way of believing like a street preacher. I don't think that yelling at them about their beliefs and shaming them is going to help them or me. And I like finding things that I can agree about with other people. So that's one thing. I think I enjoy people. I enjoy my kids, and I think that's something that I want to model to the world because I feel like we get a lot of messaging that being a parent is just this oppressive, awful thing when I find it magical and fun. And part of that is my flexibility as a person, right? The other side of the inability to time manage is that I'm flexible. I'm a little bit unpredictable. Children's fits don't throw me off because I'm already kind of thrown off. But I think I like to talk about that publicly, about how much I just really enjoy their personalities and parenting them.
I love being a mom too, so much more than I would have expected. And it does seem like a class thing. I keep hearing it's like the rich Democrats I know are all having kids.
Yeah.
That messaging is weird. I'm not exactly sure who it's for. It's weird. It comes from, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know who it's for. I'm not sure who it's serving exactly.
Yeah,
because
I know it's hard because so much of this can get political. So you're like, I'm blaming one side. I'm really not. There's just a lot of content about motherhood being a slog.
Well, it's definitely from the left. You hear that,
right.
but it's I'm not sure who it's Yeah, it's weird too, because the people writing that, I'm like, I feel like you have nannies. Like, I feel like you're not momming like I am.
Yeah.
Which is with no help. So I don't know that
I think some of that might be why it's the case, right? So some of this is the problem of our kind of the nature of our work. And I think one of the very few good things the COVID era gave us was a bit more flexibility on work schedules, because I think I always had a weirdly flexible work schedule, probably you as well, although like late night because you're doing comedy. But I always had a strangely flexible schedule. And that was part of the plan because I wanted to be around my kids.
Yeah.
And if you're only seeing your kids rushing to get them out the door, and then you're only seeing them at the end of the day when they're kind of cranky and you're rushing them to bed, you're seeing both parties are seeing the worst of each other every day.
Yeah.
But if you have some built-in time in there during the week when they're at their good hours and you're in your good hours, you get a lot more out of it. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of talk about intensive parenting and how that has changed since the 80s and 90s, the helicopter parenting, just doing so much when you're with your kids and so much for your kids when you're with your kids that you don't end up creating fun, independent people. You end up creating a codependent situation that no one's having fun in.
Yeah. There's so much pressure. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's been wild being like a old mom. I mean, truly old. Like, people are like, "Are you having another kid?" I'm like, I'm going to be 46 in November. Like,
my husband would have another one. And I'm like, I think I might have hit the ceiling. Like my last one I had and I was very lucky. I had 2 kids at 41 and 42, I think. Both very healthy, decent pregnancies, healthy labors, routine births, right? And now, like, there is a part of me that's like, could we go one more? But I'm getting, I'm 44 right now. So that's
okay.
Yeah, we're up there. But old moms unite.
There's a lot of women are having. That was something I learned is my geriatric self, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think it's in the cards. This is a young person's game.
Although I will say, for your intensive parenting concerns in the future and not to helicopter, siblings are helpful for that, because then they can entertain each other. And that's one of the things I learned very early. And one thing I tell new moms of a pair of siblings is, what's important for you to do is to learn how to ignore them for about 20 minutes, and then they will play with each other.
Yeah.
But you have to get out of the picture.
Yeah. She's pretty good at playing by herself, which is good.
That's good. See, you're already ignoring her properly.
I'm definitely good at ignoring her. No, because I want her to be just like independent and creative. And I feel sometimes guilty that she won't have a sibling because we are older parents. And I'm like, I don't want her to be all alone. But my husband's also like, Bridget, I feel guilty being a father of if we had a boy and he's 17 and I'm 70 or whatever.
Right.
He's like, that just feels like unethical.
Yeah, you start doing the math. You're like, ooh, we're getting up there.
Yeah. Well, where can we find you and all of your podcasts? This has been a pleasure. I love you so much. I'm so grateful for you out in the world and in the media. You're one of the people that I turn to often when I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. And I'll be like, let's see what Mary Katharine is saying.
Yeah, I try to keep my head about me. I'm doing the best I can. I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. I do a podcast called Getting Hammered with my friend Vic Mattis, and another podcast called Normally with Carol Markowitz, who's a writer for the New York Post, and you guys will know from Twitter. She's fantastic. You can subscribe to Getting Hammered or Normally wherever you get podcasts. They're
nice.
Fun.
You're fun. And you're funny. Thanks for coming on.
The Check-In with Bridget and Cousin Maggie can now be found at Phetasy.com. It's been titled Another Round with Bridget Phetasy, and it's now in video.
This has been Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Phetasy. I'm Bridget Phetasy, and you're welcome. the dumbest line.